Today's training should be fairly short. We should actually take less than 30 minutes, which I know is always nice to have a little bit of extra time back. So we're going to go over closing out your events, so getting them ready or getting them finished out so that you are ready to start your new ones for the next fiscal year. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So first up is during an event or post-event, as you are processing all of your credit cards, a lot of times you'll run across people who maybe they bought a Circle of Red membership and they're making payments, so they haven't paid their full balance yet, or maybe they personally did a sponsorship, something like that, and they haven't fully paid, or they're planning on sending a check, but then you end up with a credit card on file for an auction purchase or an Open Your Heart donation or something like that, and we don't want to charge that credit card for that outstanding balance that they're planning on sending a check for. So in order not to do that, we put in those pledge payments to put a hold on the money so they don't get overcharged. So one of the first things you want to do when you're closing out is to make sure all of those pledge payments have been deleted, so that you can tell that that particular person still has a balance due. So you're going to go into View Edit Payments, go to Show Advanced Search, and you can drop down a payment type of pledge and do a search. This event doesn't have any. If you did have any, you can just click on that little box in the upper left-hand corner to highlight them all, and then just hit delete. And all of those balances will come due again. Okay. Any questions about that piece? Okay. The next thing we're going to look at is entering your direct expenses. We do have a space to put in direct expenses, and those are required for you to put them into Greater Giving. There's also space to put in your indirect expenses. Those are not required, but if you want to track those in Greater Giving, you are more than welcome to. So when we do expenses, you're going to run your report from Prism or E1. You don't need to put an entry for every single vendor that you pay. You just need to do one entry for each expense line. So the 4705 direct expenses, prizes, awards, that thing, you would just put in that lump sum. Or your direct expenses for meals, you would put in that lump sum. You don't need to say that you paid this company $50 and that company $200 and so on. So to enter those, you are going to go into View Edit Items. I'm just going to do a quick check to make sure they're not already here. Oh, look, you guys are way ahead of me. So you're going to create items, and you can just click on Add to create them. And you'll put it in just like what's in here. The name of the expenses, direct expense dash whatever it is. The item type, you'll drop that down and choose the direct expense that matches your name. Your section is going to be direct expense. If you've also decided to put in your indirect expenses, you can choose that section if you're doing those. And then over in the cost, you'll just put in the total amount from that line item. And then zero out your sales tax if you're in Maine or New York. And of course, I'm using a New York event as an example, so just make sure that that sales tax is zeroed out. The other thing you can do to really separate these from your auction items is to number them according to the line item on the E1 or Prism report. So you can number that 4705, 4715, and so on. So that's all the pieces you need, just that number, name, item type, section, and cost. Everything else is either left blank or zero. And we'll save it. And you'll just do that for each line item on that expense report. Okay. Any questions about your expenses? Okay, next up, you want to double check your packages. This is something that should have been done when your event was first created and you first started putting in your packages, but just make sure post-event, when you're sending out all of those acknowledgement letters and everything, that you take a look down through, and we don't need to look at auction, we can look at admission and sponsorship packages. Just take a look through anything that you've sold and make sure that if it's a sponsorship or a ticket or a table or anything like that where they receive some sort of benefit, that there's a fair market value in that space. We don't want any of our fair market values to be $0 unless it was a straight donation. So in this case, if this signature sponsorship was sold for that $30,000, there should be a fair market value in there. And all you have to do to fix that is just click on Edit. And I think most of you know that fair market value calculation, but if you don't, it's your direct expense budget divided by your expected number of guests, multiplied by how many tickets come with this sponsorship. And you would just fill that value into the value and save it. Okay. If you want to see just those packages that you've sold, you can do a search on all of the packages that are in your database. Go to your advanced search, and you can check off the box for have been sold. And that way you can make sure that everything you sold has that fair market value. So a lot of these are auction items, but we'll scroll down through and you can see there's your tickets and your sponsorships. And it looks like every package that has been sold for this event has a fair market value, so that is all done for this one. Next, there's two reports that you want to run for your event. One, to make sure there's no mistakes in your packages and your sections and things like that, to make sure all of the money's flowing to the places where it should be on the reports. And the other one will give you a nice detailed list of everybody that you basically need to chase down. Anybody who still has an outstanding balance, maybe they made a pledge for Open Your Heart, they raised their paddle but then left early, excuse me, or they bid on something in a silent auction and had to leave, and you know, you're trying to call them to collect. So under reports and exports, the two reports you're going to use are the AGG06A event evaluation and the BID03 sales listing by supporter. The AGG06 is found under general reports. So general project reports, it's the very first one. And then I can never remember where the BID is. I think it's under common reports. It is. So the BID01 is found under common event reports. And of course, those are two reports that you're going to use a lot, so I highly recommend putting them in your favorites, which I did years ago, which is why I can never remember where those reports are actually located. So the first one is the event evaluation. We're going to click on Run. All you have to do for this report is put in your ballroom seat capacity. Do not put in a cost per meal. That will add an extra expense to your report. And since we already put in our direct expenses and put in that line for meals, you don't want to show a double charge for those meals. So if your ballroom maxes out at 400, you put 400 in there and say next. Let me zoom in a little. So this is your entire event in one snapshot. It's a nice 2-page report that shows everything you can want to know about your event. So it has your chair information, it has all of your ELT giving information, it's going to have your total breakdown, all of your seating, those that were the seats that were comped versus those that were actually sold, your gross, your net, your expenses, all of that, where you are towards your goals. It even lists some best practices. So if you need a reminder of what the best practice would be for sponsorship, it's right there in that report. So we can look at this report, and let me scroll up a little bit. And it's broken down by level of sponsorship, so level 1, level 2, level 3, etc. It only shows the level names through level 3, and then where you see these black lines, those are the cutoffs for the next levels. So this first line is level 4, level 5, and level 6. And this report is showing very nicely. You should be looking at it, and it should be flowing down from highest to lowest. If it's not, say you have this $1,000 sponsorship showing up in level 3, $1,000 is definitely not a level 3 sponsorship level for this MSA, so we would want to go in and adjust that package and put the correct level on it. So it'll show you the package name, the dollar amount it was sold for, how many of them were sold, the number of guests per each of those sponsorship, your net per guest, etc., and how much of your total income that particular sponsorship package makes up. So for this event, we have our total sponsorship income is $215,000, which is 66% of our overall goal. Best practice would be 70% or more, awfully close. And then from the top 4 levels, we want 50% of sponsorships from top 4. The event has 65% from the top 4, so they went over that best practice. Ticket income, it will show you your different ticket levels. If you have multiple levels of ticket pricing, patron, VIP, some Go Red events have student pricing, survivor pricing, things like that. So it'll show you all of your different levels of pricing, how much were sold at each of those levels, and the income from that. You'll have a live and silent auction breakdown. This event didn't have a silent auction, so it's just showing the live. If you're looking at this report pre-event, which I do recommend doing just to make sure that those sponsorship packages are always correct, it's easier to fix them before the event than to wait until after the event and try to, backtrack. So before the event, before you start putting in your auction items, the auction section doesn't show up on the report. So don't panic if you don't see it. As soon as you start entering those auction items, that section will appear on this report. So this will show you your total retail value of your packages, your actual income, the percentage of guests who purchased auction packages, and then again, here's your best practice, here's the actual percentage of your goal. Next is the Open Your Heart. It will show you pre-event versus the actual event day, how much at each level, or all of the dollar levels and how many of each level were sold, and then percent of total income. Okay, and again, there's your best practice, there's your actual percentage. For Go Red events, there will also be a section just like this for Circle of Red and Men Go Red. Because we're looking at a Heartball event, those sections don't exist. And then there's your breakdown of your expenses. So you can see here your direct expense meals, the cost is in there. If we had put in that meal cost at the beginning, there'd be an extra $29,000 up here under food and meal cost, which is why we never want to do that. So there's your total expenses. If you had put in your indirect, it would also show that indirect total there. So very nice, simple report to see basically your entire event and all of the income. The next report we want to run is that BIDO3. I'm going to run it on all. Normally you would send this out to Excel. Just because Excel takes a few minutes to run, I'm just going to show it on my screen on a PDF. And then for your advanced settings, you can show totals only, or if you want to see everything that a particular supporter purchased, you can list the purchases. That's completely up to you. Make sure you're showing all of your packages. So from auction packages to other packages, make sure all of those are checked off. You don't necessarily need to show your package value or the address or that information. I'm just going to leave them there. So this is going to be the long version of the report because I ran it for every single purchase. You can also, if you go into View Edit Supporters and do an advanced search, you can look, search based on sales and payments, and there's a little box to check off that says sales are underpaid. And what that will do is narrow your search down to only those people who have an outstanding balance. So instead of getting, let me see how long this is. So this is an 11-page report. It's not horrible, but I've seen events that have this report come out to be, 49, 60 pages, which can get a little overwhelming. So for 11 pages, not that bad. You can just scroll down through. And you're looking in this due column. So you want to see anybody who has an outstanding balance. So for this one, we can see the Albany Associates in Cardiology has a $5,000 balance. If we know that that check came in, you want to go look it up in WIA and make sure that you're putting that payment in for them so that goes away. Same thing for Albany Med. There's their balance. If you know that these payments have come in, make sure that you're entering them in there so that we don't look like we're leaving money out there. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of the report, it'll give you a grand total. So here's our total of sales, our total in payments. This 130 is sales tax. So there's our total in payments, and this is how much we still have outstanding for this event. So before the end of the fiscal year, you would want to be collecting that and making sure that that hopefully becomes a zero. If you have Open Your Heart pledges from a Go Red event, you see there may not be any in here. A lot of times we'll get the pledge cards in where people will fill it out and say, bill me, or I'm going to send a check, things like that. If you've tried multiple times to contact them and it's just not coming through, and you really don't think that this person is ever going to pay that pledge, go ahead and delete that sale. We don't want to count it if we're not expecting it to receive it. So, at some point, the event director should make the call that, yeah, this just isn't going to come in, and go ahead and delete that sale so that it takes your balance due down. Any questions about the reports? Okay, so just real quick, I'll show you that query. So in View Edit Supporters, drop down your advanced search, search on sales and payments, and on the balance due, if you do underpaid, and search, it just gives you 8 supporters. So from there, you can click on Reports and Exports, run that same BIDO3, and for this one, the report is probably only a page long. It is. So we just have that one page to go off of, and there's all of our balances due. Okay. The last thing you want to be doing, and you want to be doing this, periodically throughout the year, but definitely do a full search at least once a year. So under supporters, you have a check for duplicates link. If you click that, it's going to take everybody who has an identical name and compare them side by side. So we can see that this is the same person, it's the same address. They have some notes in there, and you can either choose one note or the other, or if you click the middle one for add, it will put both notes into their supporter notes. And then you can click on merge supporters and get kicked out of the system. That shouldn't have happened. So you'll click on the merge supporters button. If you know there's two people and they have the same name and they're at different addresses, it does happen that we have multiple people with the same exact name. You can tell the system that they're not duplicates by clicking the supporters not duplicates button. If you're not sure and you need to do a little more research, you can just click the skip button. As you go through, it'll tell you how far through you are in the process. This one looks like they only have one duplicate, because on this one duplicate they're at 100%. So they would just need to merge that one. The other thing you want to do is in your actual database, if you search for the word guest, we all know that we never get our full guest lists. We always have to put in those placeholders. We don't want these building up from year to year. So as these people check in, we should be overwriting it with the name of the actual guest, so that we don't have these all standing out here. If that doesn't happen and they make a purchase, you will not be able to delete them. Otherwise, if you click them all off, so just hit that button and it will highlight all of them, and hit delete, it will tell you some of them have a role or some of them cannot be deleted, and that's fine. We'll leave those there. But if we hit delete, it will take out all the ones that can be deleted and, shorten your database a bit. So it deleted all of them. If there were any left, you could hit that check mark again and go to more and archive all of those guest ofs. We don't want them floating around in our database. We want our databases as clean as possible. Okay, clear that. The other thing you want to do is, take a look at all of your companies and people. Just kind of scroll down through, and if you see, that Bruce and Ruth Ann are a couple, click them both off and join them in household. That way, if they attend an event, it's much easier to check them in as a couple rather than separately. So as much as you find those, make sure you're doing that. If you know that this company has gone out of business, you can check them off and archive them. So it's just a lot of getting your database as clean as possible. If you see something like this, Caroline and Christine, I'm guessing they're sisters. If this was Caroline and Carolyn, you would want to find out the correct spelling of the name. The duplicate checker won't pull it because there is a different spelling. But if you run across something like that, you can check them both off in here. Click the merge button and it will take you right to that same screen where it's oops, sorry about that. It will take you to that same screen where it compares them side by side. There we go. So you can choose the information you want to keep and then hit merge. You may also run across something where, say there's a James Smith and Jim Smith. You would want to merge those into one record. Also, in the past, and there may not be any in here, in the past, before we had the ability to household, we used to put couples in as one entity. So you may find a record that says like Jim and Sue Amsler, but it's assigned to a person. What you want to do in that case is click on Edit. You can change your supporter type. Click that drop down and choose Household and separate them into two people. Any questions about the database cleanup piece? Okay, so if there are no questions, that's all I have for you today. I am going to stop the recording.